The snow had barely stopped falling when the sound of shattering glass echoed through the quiet neighborhood, the kind of sound that makes the world hold its breath for a second. A man in a heavy coat stood frozen on the porch, staring at the collapsed figure near the steps. The stranger lay there half-curled in the cold, one hand gripping her ribs as though trying to hold herself together, her breath trembling in the icy air. For a moment the world looked like a scene paused in time, winter swirling around a wounded soul whose eyes flickered between consciousness and something dangerously close to giving up. This was how Rowan Hale's morning began. He had been on his way to pick up his son's prescription, exhausted from working the night shift and barely keeping up with the weight of bills stacked on the kitchen table, when fate placed this stranger directly in his path. He crouched beside her, noticing the traces of a deep bruise forming at her temple, the snowflakes clinging helplessly to her hair as if begging her not to fade away. He didn't know who she was. He didn't know why she looked like someone who had run from something terrifying. All he saw was a human being in pain. And his heart, tired and scarred though it was, reacted instantly. If you're watching this on Ripple of Love, like, comment, share, and subscribe if you believe hope, compassion, and second chances still matter in this world. Rowan lifted her carefully, feeling her shiver violently against him. She wasn't dressed for winter, only a thin red dress, elegant and striking even in the cold, but entirely wrong for the harsh weather outside. She seemed like someone who belonged in warmth and light, not lying alone on a frozen porch. As he carried her inside his modest house, he didn't realize how dramatically this single act of kindness would twist the direction of his life. Inside, the daytime light spilled through the windows, illuminating the cozy chaos of a single-father home. Toys in corners, papers scattered across a table, an overworked coffee maker humming in the background. Rowan's son, Milo, peeked from the hallway with sleepy confusion, rubbing his eyes as he watched his father lay the stranger gently on the couch. Rowan reassured him with a quiet nod before hurrying to warm a blanket, check her pulse, and try to steady her breathing. As the woman slowly regained awareness, her gaze darted wildly around the room, like someone expecting danger at any moment. Rowan felt a protective instinct ignite inside him, an instinct born from years of shielding his son from a world that hadn't always been kind. Milo had lost his mother at birth, and Rowan had spent every day since trying to fill that impossible void with love and stability. The result was a man worn down by responsibility yet driven by a fierce devotion that kept him going even when life pushed him to his knees. The stranger's name was Alina Verdon, though she seemed reluctant to share anything beyond that at first. Her elegant features and the faint scent of expensive perfume hinted at a life far removed from Rowan's everyday struggles. She seemed like someone who lived in polished offices and glossy buildings, someone untouchable, unreachable. Yet here she was, trembling on the couch of a man who barely had enough money for rent. Days passed, and each morning brought more clarity. Alina wasn't just any stranger. She was someone burdened by secrets, someone running from a betrayal within her own world. Rowan didn't pry, but Milo's gentle presence and Rowan's quiet warmth created a space where she felt safe enough to breathe. She helped wash dishes in his small sink, brushed snow off the windowsill when the wind blew it inside, and sat with Milo as he practiced reading aloud, her brown eyes softening every time he made a mistake and laughed it off. Daytime sunlight painted her in new colors, not the glamorous red of the night Rowan found her, but soft morning gold that made her look like someone rediscovering her place in the world. Rowan tried not to notice how his heart reacted when she smiled. He had spent so many years burying personal desires beneath responsibility that the sensation of wanting something, wanting someone, felt almost foreign. But Alina carried an invisible ache too, something he saw every time she looked out the window with a heaviness that hinted at battles fought behind closed doors. It wasn't until the local newspaper arrived on a crisp morning that Rowan learned the truth, or rather, part of it. The front page featured a headline about a missing CEO, a woman known for transforming companies with a cold brilliance that intimidated everyone around her. Rowan stared at the picture. It was Alina, polished and poised in a tailored suit, looking nothing like the vulnerable woman who slept in his home and helped Milo build snow forts in the yard. She saw the paper the same moment he did. And for the first time, her defensiveness cracked entirely. She told him how the board of her own company had tried to push her out by force, how she discovered fraudulent activity she refused to ignore, how her refusal to stay silent had become a threat to powerful men who decided she was easier to eliminate than negotiate with. She had fled, dazed and scared, in a borrowed coat that she eventually lost while running across icy streets. The red dress was all she had left when she collapsed on that porch. Rowan listened in stunned silence, realizing the gravity of what she had been hiding, and why she looked so frightened the morning he brought her inside. Yet beneath the shock, he also realized something else. She trusted him. Not because he had answers or influence or money. She trusted him because he had saved her without knowing who she was. Because he treated her like a human being, something her world often forgot to do. As trust deepened, so did their connection. Rowan watched her rebuild herself slowly, piece by fragile piece. She watched him struggle quietly with bills and exhaustion, his hands rough and skin tired from years of physical work and emotional weight. She saw in him a kind of resilience she had never known, a strength not built on power but on love. And then came the day she told him she had to go back and face everything. Rowan prepared himself to let her go, believing their paths had crossed only briefly. But just before she left, she gave him a look that felt like a confession of everything they had shared and everything they feared to say aloud. The weeks after she left were long, gray, and heavy. The house felt quieter. Milo missed her laughter. Rowan missed her presence in ways he didn't know how to explain, even to himself. Then, one calm afternoon, a black car pulled up outside his house. Alina stepped out, no longer hiding, no longer broken. She moved with the grace of someone who had survived the storm and returned stronger. Behind her stood two officials, and Rowan panicked for a moment, thinking something was wrong. But then she smiled, not the guarded smile she once wore, but one warm enough to melt the cold edges of winter. She told him everything. She had won. The corruption was exposed, justice was being served, and she had regained control of her company. But instead of returning to the life she once knew, she wanted something different now, something real, grounded, human. Something like the warmth she found in his small home. She offered him a job, not out of pity, but out of belief. She wanted him as part of her new leadership initiative, one focused on compassion rather than cold ambition. She wanted to give him stability, possibilities, a future that didn't feel like a constant uphill struggle. And most of all, she wanted him and Milo in her life, not as charity, but as the pieces of peace she had never known she needed. If this story touched your heart so far, please support it by liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing to Ripple of Love. Right before the final emotional closing, please comment below with what part of this story moved you the most. Rowan looked at Alina, feeling an emotion rise inside him that he had spent years trying not to feel. Hope. A second chance. A life he had never dared imagine. And as she reached for his hand, standing there in the soft blanket of daylight snow, Rowan realized something extraordinary. Sometimes the people who enter our lives unexpectedly aren't strangers or burdens or mysteries. Sometimes they are the very miracles we didn't know were searching for us. And sometimes helping someone doesn't just save their life, it transforms our own in ways we never saw coming. In that quiet, breathtaking moment, Rowan understood that compassion doesn't just ripple outward, it returns, stronger than before, reshaping destinies with gentle, unstoppable force.